Greetings, everyone. Thanks for coming out to yet another Brony Debates Live. I hope you're all doing great. Tonight, we are talking about a suggestion made on Twitter from, what was this gentleman's name? Age3RCM. His Twitter handle is in the description of the video. And he wanted to know if we think it's a good idea for Brony Conventions to open up to other fandoms. We have a little bit of historical precedence for that type of thing, but other than that, Brony Conventions have been pretty well self-contained. So to join me for this, I got on a few people who have more experience in other fandoms than I do. So starting directly to my left here, we got Samoht Lion. Samoht, tell us a little bit about what other fandoms you're a part of and what you've done for other conventions.
I can see the fandoms I've been part of have been a combination of anime, furry, historical reenactors.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the big ones that I've been part of.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And continuing down the list here was our surprise add-on for tonight. I didn't expect until just a few minutes ago that Leo Convoy was going to be returning to the show. How are you doing, Leo?
Nobody expects a lie acquisition.
Nobody expects that face just kind of staring eerily. At least this time you're going after Cruizer and not Bliss.
Oh, shut up.
Give it time. But,
yep.
The fandoms I've been involved in are, of course, anime, as Samoht has mentioned. Samoht and I share one fandom, specifically Voltron. But there's, of course, Thundercats, Transformers, He-Man, G.I. Joe, Sailor Moon, a whole slew of different things, honestly. Godzilla, everything, just about.
Sounds good. And then we've got Cruizer, Concert Cruizer, right next to Leo. Cruizer, what sort of other fandoms do you participate in?
Mostly with horror and music as well. Music does have its own fandom, but when it comes to musical cons, that's kind of iffy.
All right. Well, don't they call those concerts, or maybe music festivals?
If you want to consider those conventions, then by all means.
All right, cool. And to introduce the last returning guest for tonight, we must ask the question: why does a plague spread or a field burn?
Very good. What makes a con, I guess, if we're going to ask that question? I don't know.
Yep. So, how are you doing tonight, FNGR?
I'm doing fine. This made a good break from editing.
All right, cool. So, here's how things work in case you're tuning in for the first time tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about this and go back and forth on our ideas and sort of speculate, because that's really all we can do when it comes to the future. If you have an interesting comment to something that we say or a question, feel free to ask it there in the chat, and during the last 15 minutes we'll address it. I'm going to give a quick shout out to all of my generous supporters on Patreon who make these streams and my upload schedule possible, especially the guys at the $10 and up tier. These guys are Autoknight, Sodden Girder, Senko, Jennan, Kellogg, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, and the Equestrian City Heroverse series of fan fictions. Be sure to check out all those links in the description. If you want to come on the show, I'd love to have you. We just need you on the Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Come on, I need you all to join that up. If everybody watches just gives $1 a month, I'll cease to have problems. Anyway, now that all that's out of the way, let's talk about some conventions here. So, FNGR, what sort of outside Brony fandom events have been at other Brony conventions, and how has that gone in your opinion?
Well, like, what did they intermingle at 2018? Sam, you were there.
I remember they were trying to. There was a big Lion King fan up meetup. I remember that, but I couldn't go up because I was working at the time, so I remember that happening. Was it Saber Spark doing something about a furry panel at the event?
Well, you know what I was just about to say. I'd prefer that we didn't intermingle with the furries, but since I don't remember...
I don't think as much as I wish we wouldn't intermingle with the furries, I don't think it's possible to avoid them.
No, there is one way. Crusade.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, I keep hearing bad things about the con, even though that's where our roots kind of came out of for the con scene. I won't go too far into that. But I mean, we don't have the same issues they do. I'm not going to beat my chest too hard about that, but yeah. I don't know if we splashed a little bit of gaming here and there. I couldn't see the harm in it.
Well, that happens at other conventions anyway, and it's usually a big draw for a lot of people. Like in, I think it was 2017, one of my friends, what's his name, Echo, or Eclipse rather. My friend Eclipse went and spent most of the weekend at the Smash Brothers tournament in 2017. So we definitely intermingle with gaming, and a lot of people see that as a draw to most conventions, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. What do you guys think? Okay, so something I've noticed about other fandoms, because when Cruizer and I worked for the Grand Brony Gala down in Tampa, we would try to appeal to other fandoms to try to get more people to come to us and maybe give Brony a try. And we tried Doctor Who, and we tried Star Trek, and we tried the community. We tried Dragon Ball Z. Wow, that one's new to me. I didn't know we did that
with Ian James Corlett, because he was one of the voices of Goku.
Right. So we did try to get that appeal, but generally, the responses we got were that other fandoms don't really play well with bronies. So what I notice here is something similar to the furry fandom, in which we can spread and ponify everything that we touch, but nobody from the outside, or not many people from the outside, are trying to come in. So, and especially as we got into like season 6, and so we just generally stopped seeing pony cosplayers outside of Brony conventions. So for that reason, I don't think it will work terribly well to try to open up to other fandoms. I don't think those panels are going to get a lot of traction. If I remember correctly, I think it was 2016 or 17 when BronyCon tried to have a Pokemon event, and not very many people showed up to that at all, and a lot of people got upset that it wasn't just a purely Brony convention anymore. So does anybody else have any sort of memories or thoughts on when that happened?
I don't have an exact thing for that, but I had an example that I think latches up with basically what you were talking about there. And you said that like Brony has its own version of everything.
Yeah.
It reminded me of, like, you've ever listened to like a huge computer nerd talk about Linux. Well, we have a version for that, and we have a version for that, but only Linux people bother with all that crap. Just in the same way that bronies will only bother with, our Brony versions. Like, zombie people aren't going to come forward for the Trotting Dead. Doctor Who people aren't going to show up for Doctor Who's. Maybe Ren and Stimpy fans would have showed up for, what's it called, Pony.mov. But, I guess, question mark. Yeah.
But, I would say outside the Brony events, I remember back in 2014, the event Katsucon, they had a giant My Little Pony meetup at the one of their photo shoots, and they had like what armor version of like what Pony Clash with Sailor Moon type of cosplay going on. But this past year at Katsucon, nobody was doing anything pony related, so it's like dead there.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. So outside of gaming, but people play video games anyway. Unless we decided to just the Brony conventions just took out all the games that weren't specifically pony games, but there's probably a grand total of 10. So that gamers hall would be pretty barren if they tried to be exclusive there. Does anybody else have any other experiences with conventions trying to open up to other fandoms, and how did that go? I would think that maybe Samoht might have the most insight there, having vended at many conventions outside of Bronies, as well as several Brony conventions. What do you think, Samoht?
When like for example, right now I'm helping bring back an old event that got shut down about 2 years ago, and we're realizing it's related to World War II historical people we like to reenact. And we realized not too many people are doing World War II anymore. There seems to be a strong interest in Vietnam for some reason. So trying to open up to that audience, I don't know. It's like, okay, where's this going? And I find that it kind of hard, especially with ponies. Like, okay, how do we approach this that makes them want to engage with this type of fandom? And I don't know, it's tricky. I find it very tricky indeed.
Well, a lot of people get put off by the pony sonas.
Well, it depends on what conventions we're talking about here, because my background of conventions isn't vending like Samoht. I tend to run a lot of panels at different conventions in Texas. And specifically, there's been plenty of My Little Pony Brony panels within Texas conventions, plenty of vending booths, especially back when the show was apparently in its heyday. I saw a lot of horse things. And it's not even so much the pony sonas that tend to be the thing that drives people away from my experience. It's mostly the fact that because My Little Pony fans are very insular, and a lot of them are on the spectrum, and I don't mean that derogatorily, I mean that as a factual statement. They struggle with interpersonal interactions, and in a high stress, high energy area like a convention, that can put a lot of people off because sometimes they don't understand the concept of space. And if they were to understand that a little bit better, maybe tone down the excitement just a skosh, they do a little bit better. The issue you're going to have going forward is you had a whole bunch of specific Brony conventions, and now because the show is over, and as is the nature of fandoms, things are dying out. That's healthy. That's fine. You just got to learn to adapt, and part of adapting is being able to pick and choose what conventions you want to apply for panels at or vending booths at. And frankly, from my experience, I wouldn't go say so much for anime conventions because of a lot of factors. I'd mostly go for, say, comic book conventions, or even if they have general animation conventions. They don't in Texas, but general animation conventions, you might want to go with something around there. Just general nerdery as opposed to specific things to anime. Okay,
so that I got a couple of questions based off of a few different points you just made there, Leo.
Sure.
So the reason why we don't get a lot of outside and mingling, and the reason why we don't travel outside of the Brony fandom all that much is what you said was that we got a lot of Bronies on the spectrum. And that is a fact, and that is a factual statement, and I agree with that. So to take that to its logical conclusion, as far as I can tell, it would be that an autistic person or someone who's on the spectrum might not be willing to go outside of their comfort zone. So if they're familiar with something and that something happens to be the Brony fandom, then they're going to want to stay around Bronies while they're working on breaking out of their shell and learning how to interact socially or practicing whatever the case may be, depending on how far down the spectrum they are. And from the outside looking in, that's going to drip spaghetti. And I could imagine a lot of people might not really want to get involved with that. I mean, I know I was very hesitant to go to my first Brony convention because I my experience with the fandom outside of just watching the show myself and looking at art on Equestria daily at that point was pony thread simulators, and I'm like, oh my god, if these people are acting the way they do in 4chan on real life, we're gonna have a real freaking problem. So do you think that's an accurate assessment?
I think generally it is. The biggest thing you're going to want to have to push here, and again, I haven't seen all the episodes, as I said last time I was on your show, it seems that one of the main themes throughout the show is improvement. And when it comes specifically to autistic people and trying to get them to acclimate better, they have to break out of that comfort zone. Now, you can start small. You've had these Brony conventions going on for close to a decade now. It's time to branch out, and to do so, you have to have, number one, interest outside of Brony. And every single Brony I've ever met, for the most part, they do generally have interest outside of it. Anthony likes old school comic books. You and I, we both like martial arts and some anime. Samoht and I were both super old, so we like old things like Voltron. Everybody has different things they're interested in as well. The issue is you have to be able to interact with both of them and to push past your personal comfort zone to do so. So that's something that needs to be pushed on social media and within your own collectives.
Okay.
Could I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been itching to butt in. again, but the biggest example I had for like a con that I went to, I think for about 11 years, was a Chicago Comic-Con, and even after I, mainly had stopped collecting comics, not because I hated them, but just because it got harder and harder to find comic shops and stuff. You didn't have to go to this con specifically for that thing, whereas if you go to a Babs Con or freaking I already forgot, Brony Con or any of those conventions whatsoever, and you go into the vending hall, you're buying pony, you're not getting much. Like, maybe you can get a cup, but it's going to be pony related, like
or some sort of hybridization.
Yeah, and we do have one vendor that's like at every single convention I go to, anime, comic. There's this one like pony-centric guy, and I hate to say it, it is the creepiest freaking booth at every convention I go to. There's something not right about that dude.
Drop the name, Lio.
I wish I could if I remembered it, but my instinct is I want nothing to do with this guy.
Oh.
So I go around. But
what does he sell? What does he sell?
Usually furry-related things and pony-related.
Well, there's your problem.
Well, I got two examples related to this subject.
Okay.
There's this one vendor called My Little Demon. They're from the Pittsburgh area. They kind of take the whole My Little Pony and make them all like, the four horse of the apocalypse or like any other type of mythical creature from hell. And they told me, I say, well, are you planning to go to the last BronyCon? And he goes, well, it's happening the same time as Gen Con, but I do very well at Gen Con, better than BronyCon, which I thought that very interesting. That they would pick Gen Con over BronyCon. That's where they said their market does better. So I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of people. Like, you have to remember the kind of people who go to Gen Con are the same kind of people who can afford to kind of pay Warhammer. So
what's Gen Con?
It's the mecca of gaming, and when I say gaming, I mean tabletop. I mean, like, when you picture like D&D deep pockets, this is the place to go for. Like, isn't it like all board games and shit like that, or is it just I almost said TSR? I'm an idiot. Wizards of the Coast.
I think it applies to board games and card games. Is it anything that deals with anything non-electronic games? I would say.
Can I talk now?
Yes,
of course. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I've been wanting to talk for a while.
Okay, well, can that and just say your piece.
Okay. What I wanted to say previously was with horror conventions, especially with a particular one down here, Spooky Empire, they do actually get quite a handful of heavy metal guests because metal and horror tend to go hand in hand, and they're definitely right about that. I mean, look at a lot of soundtracks to horror films, you will see a lot of metal artists. However, in recent years, they actually got someone who doesn't have any real connection to horror except just making a cameo in a horror film, and that was Weird Al. Did it go over well? Yeah, it did. But I was only there for one day, so I can't say for sure how it turned out for the whole weekend. I will say, however, though, that like a lot of people who have too much pride, this guy said this guy didn't really want to get fans, people from The Walking Dead or American Horror Story, because he said he wanted real horror fans, not a bunch of housewives. Well, that came around and bit him in the ass because that came out on social media in a way, and I will say, thanks to me, yes. And that's like the very next year, he did get people from The Walking Dead. He did get people from American Horror Story, and now it's getting to the point where he had to get Weird Al, a guy whose only contribution to horror was making an appearance in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. At some point, you're going to have to expand a little, or just try to find something that's vaguely connected to it that people can get behind.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. And the talk about music is actually a good segue to a question I wanted to ask everybody. Is apparently BabsCon this year has gotten Mystery Skulls to play at their concert. So I don't know if Mystery Skulls I don't know if Mystery Skulls has any connection to Brony outside of, I think, one of the guys, or the guy to animate their music videos, was Mystery Ben, who was a Brony animator for a while, and he did a lot of he did the Rhythm is Magic series, which is earworm at best. So how do you guys think that's going to go, and do you think that's a good thing to include into the fandom? Let's just throw out some thoughts as they come to you.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was about to say, it's a question that it's going to surrender the mic. I don't know if we have the right group, but how many people go to the Brony cons for the music?
I would say I do. I've missed a little bit of the music as of the last couple of years because Heather's not as much into the concerts as I am, but that was always one of the things that I was looking forward to was going and seeing the music acts.
Well, then you're going to have to be the one that answers that question. What do you think of them coming to the con?
I think their music is really good. So having good music at a Brony convention is always something like that, and good music is just that. And what matters most to me at a concert is are they a talented musician, and how good is their stage presence? So you got things like that to consider. Part of me is wondering if it was done because there's a weak connection there, or partly because the people, it was easy to get them, or did they think that they were going to draw non-bronies to the convention? I'm wondering how much I guess cynical strategic thought from a marketing standpoint went into making that booking, and whether or not it's going to pay off for them.
As someone, well, I don't know that much about Mystery Skulls, but judging from what I just looked up, that they are a electronica group, and bronies tend to really like electronica music. And despite whether or not people are bronies, they do seem to have a following with the general audience. In fact, somebody that I know said that I was lucky I was going to BabsCon because they got Mystery Skulls, and he's not even a brony, at least not anymore.
Huh, so we got one example of it having what we can assume is the desired effect.
Yeah. And as someone who is a music nerd, I do want to start dipping my toes into what I call fandom music, because with the rise of conventions, and especially with the internet, it has given rise to all these new niche markets of music. And I think it's something to check out. And at some point, I would like to do an experiment where I have general audiences who, for example, like heavy metal, I would show them Prince whatever and see what they think, just without any context of this guy, and see what they think of his music.
How do you still train for that?
So that's pretty interesting. Does anybody have anything they want to say in response to Cruizer?
Well, I had a few things here. Firstly, I did hear that there was a bit of discussion in the servers I'm in about it. I have an issue with it in a couple areas. Number one, from what I've gotten from a couple of the Brony musicians I've spoken to, again, I'm not as knowledgeable here. They don't tend to get much from conventions when they've done it. So bringing in a large group on top of that, and of course paying them, I personally think that's probably going to wind up sowing some discord within the interactions there. Mostly from what I understand, when bronies go to a brony event, they expect brony related music. But I think honestly, it's a convention doing what it can in its dying breaths, and I don't mean to be derogatory when I say that, but I think generally it's the fandom working in the opposite direction where they should go. Adapting is intelligent, but I think they're adapting in the wrong direction. They're adapting in the way of, we want to keep our convention separate from everybody else's, which I can understand, but if you look at other conventions that have tried that, they've all failed. There's a reason why Gargoyle Con is dead. There's a reason why Invader Con is dead. Very few conventions that are specific about one thing survive. As a matter of fact, the only one I can think of that is specific about one property that has survived, actually two that have survived, is Power Morphicon and the Transformer conventions. Those are the only ones off the top of my head I can think of.
Yeah, that's really because they've had such a legacy throughout multiple generations.
I mean, in fairness, so is My Little Pony, just not the way people think.
Well, it kind of does. With My Little Pony, it's more with at least with the old school stuff. It's more with the toys than it is with the voice actors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we were talking about bringing people to a convention, and I know there's been some pushback at a name that's going to BabsCon. Personally, I didn't have a huge problem with it myself. What did you think, Brony, of No Whacking getting the spot for guest?
That's really interesting. That they're still booking No Whacking. Because she used to have a really big presence as the Brony's Vinyl Scratch, and then she moved over into Team 4-Star and started working with them. So it's another one of those, Mystery Skulls things where it's tangentially related, definitely a little bit closer than Mystery Skulls is, but I'll admit I had a moment of cynicism when I heard about No Whacking being at BronyCon last year, and I was like, what? Why? No Whacking hasn't been a Brony for several years, so it seemed like sort of a disconnect there. Oh, so what do you think about that?
Well, okay, so recently some information has come out of them being paid for Sea Equestria, where the money basically all went towards, like, not necessarily, it was explained away as like con expenses, but there wasn't like a lot of money so much to speak that she was making he wasn't making to come out.
Yeah,
like
it wasn't paying him for his services. It was, we're gonna coop your expenses and you will do XYZ thing for the convention.
Which is fairly normal for Brony Convention guests. Folks like Dusty Cat or Silver Quill, like that. They're not usually getting paid for their appearance. The VIP guests, like your Tara Strong or your voice actors, your writers, they're making an appearance fee.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, in say No Whacking's case, is that more of a favor to her than in that case, or?
I would say, yeah, I would say so. And they definitely must believe that No Whacking is worth the investment.
Do you either disagree or I could see where, because again, there's enough Bronies that I've definitely had it beaten into me that are big fans of Team 4-Star, so I could definitely see where it would work. But do you think it's a good idea?
I think so, actually. I think so, because I think No Whacking is still popular enough. Inside of Brony, outside of Brony. She definitely got her start in Brony. I don't know. I don't see how it could go wrong. I just don't know how many people went to BronyCon last year to see No Whacking.
Well, if Bronies still like her, that's basically all that matters to any convention organizer.
Yeah. You definitely got a point. I can't argue there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's ask the ultimate question now. Is this a good thing? Now, Lio has already said that it's inevitable for all fandoms to sort of mesh together, but, Brony has been its own thing for the past darn near 10 years now. How bad is it going to be that if we assimilate with everybody else? Is it going to be, to be dramatic about it, the death of the Brony fandom, or is it going to be, are we going to breathe new life into the fandom through that type of thing? Let's, just throw out your thoughts.
Well, in my case, at least the way how I see it, when you think about My Little Pony, the show, just how long it's been around and how long all these conventions have been around, I think it's also important to realize that all the people who would be like their headlining guests of honor, we've already met. The show hasn't really produced anybody that's kind of up to that top level tier status that we have not met yet. Now, I do think they should be, some more focus on some of the lower tier characters and voice actors, but you still need that giant headliner. In which case, I think if Pony really wants to kind of continue, at least for a little bit longer, in that direction of being just Pony, I think what they need to do is actually get some of the celebrity guests they have for the Pony movie.
Well, Cruizer, you brought up a point there, and this might be cheaper. They could just hold out for Gen 5, because I'm told it's all new voice actors and new writers.
They could also maybe try to get some animators.
That'll only work if Gen 5 is good.
Well, I'm sure people will be at least curious at first. As soon as we start, have they put out like anything like an animatic yet?
No.
Okay. Does anyone know when that's due to drop? Because I know they've announced it, didn't they?
No, I don't know anything about it. Supposedly some designs got leaked like a year or 2 years ago, something like that. But I have no idea.
Yeah,
and everything I've seen about it has been questionable at best.
Yeah, but I saw that there was like a timeline where it looked like it'd be a year after the last season, and I was like, oh, so it'll be like a new season coming.
I think the images that Brony was talking about that leaked, Hasbro has not commented on them, and they probably never will. But I am just kind of hoping that they'll probably do maybe like what Transformers did, where it's the same character but a different presentation. Because that's actually not a bad way to go.
Yeah, the evergreen idea that Hasbro's going with a lot of its properties. But real quick, I do want to challenge something that Ronnie said, if it's good. Sir, people buy Michael Bay Transformers. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate.
Well, people are wrong and not good at handling their money.
Well, I have something to add on to that. Leo, do you remember what Mark Hamill said about the Star Wars movies? It doesn't matter if it's good; it just has to make money.
Well, I mean that's true of any.
And let me ask you this, Leo: how many people came into the Transformers fandom because of Michael Bay?
Actually, quite a bit. You'd be surprised, honestly.
Alrighty then. Thank you for shooting me down, Anthony. You were about to say?
Yeah, I was about to counter Sam. Yeah, how many people bought a Rose action figure there, Sam?
I mean,
how many
Michael
of those
Bay
new Star Wars toys sold?
I mean, Michael Bay was added to the Transformers Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he was. We don't talk about that entry.
It sounds like the Transformers Hall of Fame is right up there with the WWF Hall of Fame, so there you go.
Well, I mean, does the WWF Hall of Fame have Dinobot in it?
And to be fair, the Transformers does have a good ride at Universal Studios.
I wouldn't know. We've had BotCons there, but I never went to the studio because I am not spending money like that. I'd rather spend it on the Transformers. But I'm getting off topic. I apologize.
Yeah, that's quite all right. So, let me see here. So we talked about whether or not that's a good thing. We heard from some people. Does anybody else have something they want to add to that?
Personally, one thing I think the Brony fandom needs to do, and I know this may sound mean, but I think they have to kind of come to grips with reality here and say, look, if we want to stay afloat, then we have to adapt. I'm sorry, that's just the way the world is.
Well, you have to have something at the con that you can't get anywhere else, which is a significant deal harder to do with the internet floating around the way it is.
Well, yes and no. And when it comes to adapting, again, all right. So let's assume that the desire is not to integrate, but is to stay removed.
Mm-hmm.
That is possible, but Anthony's right in that sense. You have to have something nobody else has. In the case of, let's take BotCon for example. The first BotCon was in 1994. It had maybe a couple of hundred attendees, I think, at most. But ultimately, BotCon got built up over years by having a massive vendor hall with international distributors, and ultimately wound up getting official backing by Hasbro. So if you want to have a big Brony convention, there are some sacrifices that are going to need to be made. And there are sacrifices that I don't see any negative to, but I'm also a Puritan. Let's be honest here. You guys would have to do the following. Number one, you'd have to start appealing to Hasbro directly. You'd have to be in communication with somebody. You'd have to find a way to contact them. Because if a whole bunch of like boomer Transformer fans can do it, tech-savvy bronies absolutely can. Well, but the other sacrifice you'd have to... give me a second here. The other sacrifice you'd have to make, you'd have to go without the 18-plus stuff. Because no corporation is going to back that.
Yeah, I actually have heard from a few people who vend their art there that the 18 plus stuff tends to really cut into their profits, because that's where a lot of people are spending money.
So FNGR was about to say something. What do you think?
Well, Brony, you've been to, I think, maybe a bit more cons than I have. Which I don't think it'd be Babs, but what Brony convention do you feel is closest to being that gateway to Hasbro?
It would have been BronyCon. Now the conventions that I've been to are BronyCon, the Grand Brony Gala, which has also been discontinued. They had their last year in 2016, and I've been to BabsCon twice, and I've been to Everfree Northwest, I think 3 or 4 times, something like that. And Everfree Northwest is a really good convention, but
oh yes.
What I'm getting at here is I might not have the sample size needed. I think Everfree Northwest is a really good convention, very well run. They've always had a nice venue. They've always had a good schedule. They've always had good events and good variety and things like that. And unlike BronyCon, which, especially BronyCon's last 2 years, I thought it became a real problem of having the suggestive artwork right out in the front, and where everybody could see it, and there was a body pillow every other booth. It was, it got to be real bad, and that type of thing's going to put off a lot of people. So, based on my limited experience, I would say Everfree Northwest. So let me ask Lio a question here, because he was talking about one of the sacrifices that we would have to make would be to get rid of the 18 plus stuff. What do Brony conventions lose by getting rid of that? Because there are, and I've heard FNGR say this elsewhere, is that a lot of people go to conventions specifically for 18 plus events, party rooms and artwork and getting hammered with your friends, things like that. So if it becomes a Disneyland experience, is that a good thing or a bad thing for Brony fandoms as a whole? What do you all think?
Since it was addressed primarily to me, I'll go ahead and address it. I don't personally think you'd lose anything, because the 18 plus stuff that you want to have out of convention area, you can still do. A good analog to this is the Transformers community. We have third-party Transformers made by completely different companies that kind of steal the IP and sell it. And what they would do for BotCon, since it was ran by Hasbro, and as you can imagine, Hasbro would go no to anybody infringing on their IP literally under their noses. They'd sell their wares outside of their hotel room, and that's where they get drunk and do all those things. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. The main concern is getting it away from the convention itself. And what you're going to lose is some people not being able to let their inhibitions fly and to not be complete goons in front of public. But what you gain is this. Number one, you gain a more family-friendly atmosphere, and you have a wider general audience. And that opens up the door to larger investments of people. Because here's the thing. I'm in my mid-30s. If I had a kid, like if I had a little boy or a little girl, but I can even go better. My sister has a little girl, and if my sister were to go to a My Little Pony convention as they are now, let's take BronyCon for example, since I was there. If you were to bring her child to BronyCon and the first thing she sees are those, turn around, walk right out of there.
Yeah,
that's how a parent looks at it. So,
right. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one of the things that I suggested, and I know at least one artist agreed with me, is that if you're going to sell that kind of stuff, please, perhaps maybe what you could do is just take a picture of it, put it in in some binder, and if people want to see the 18 older stuff, you can pull that binder out as a catalog, and they can look through it and make a purchase discreetly without having that stuff on display.
So
give them business card. Here, go to my website. We'll make arrangements later, dude.
Yeah, and I wanted to sort of redirect this question at Samoht there, and hopefully we can get an artist's perspective on that kind of thing. Samoht, let's picture you're an artist and you're vending at a Brony convention. And but the hypothetical here is that you deal a lot in suggestive anthro artwork. So even so, it might not be so much of a stretch for you, but they're saying you can't do that. Or how does that affect you as an artist, and are you going to buy a vendor's hall pass now?
No, honestly, I still, because of the stuff that I have, I could make a, I guess what's the words I'm trying to think here? I feel like if I had that, because I have it in my portfolio, and they say, hey, you can't sell it here, I have no problem with that, because, for example, I have a setup for Anthrocon. I'm going to be vending there. They're putting all their loot stuff in the closed-off area. Even though it sounds kind of, interesting, I'm going to be limiting my audience, because right now Anthrocon's got a boom of kids between the ages of 12 and 18 there now coming in. It's like, okay, I need to appeal to this audience. Does that mean putting my Anthro suggest stuff off the table? Sure, no problem. I'll just put it in the art show in the second area. And I said, I think most of my non-lewd stuff actually sells better. And it's not a market that works for me.
Okay. So now here's a question I have for everybody. What if, do you think it's possible, and if so, would it be a viable strategy for a corporation like Hasbro to meet bronies in the middle for that kind of thing, where they sponsor, say, parts of the event or parts of the convention? So you got this event and this event and this event going on, and Hasbro is footing the bill for that, or they are giving their endorsement in one way or another, but in a separate area and not necessarily at the hotel. But let's say, like I think it was Lio, I heard you mention in another podcast, some conventions will wall off certain parts of the vendor's hall that might be for a mature audience, and yes. And it's like, okay, and there's that, but we don't talk about that, but it's there if you want it, kind of thing. Yeah. Do we think that's a viable strategy for conventions to continue on in the future?
You go first, Leo. He spoke to you.
Since we're talking about something extremely niche, I seriously wouldn't recommend it, and I wouldn't for a couple reasons here. Number one, when you have something walled off like that in a niche community, not a broad one, but a niche community, people get really stupid when they don't think people are watching. And that's going to cause its own kerfuffle, especially with people with low inhibition, unfortunately, which exists in abundance in the Brony community. And again, your options are basically going to be adapt and integrate with other conventions and fandoms, or you wash it down, you butter it up, and you make it accessible to so many people that you will gain membership that way and possibly get corporate sponsors. That's kind of the only direction you can really go here. But one requires extreme deep cleaning, and the other requires to swallow your pride. So you got to take a choice there.
I would be perfectly fine if you weren't allowed to sell the 18 and older stuff. Kind of like the suggestions that we had, like put in a binder or give them a business card where people can see it. I would be perfectly fine with that, and Hasbro sponsoring maybe half of it. That way, because it could also be a way to kind of introduce new shows, toys, specials into the fandom without having to wait for just San Diego Comic-Con. It'll be a good way to reach people who cannot afford to go out to California in that giant megaplex.
Correct. And one of the bigger issues I noticed when I was at BronyCon is the sheer amount of it. I mean, even at anime conventions, the ones I've been to, it's like maybe a 20-80 ratio, where you have 20 of the lewd, 80 of general stuff. Mm-hmm. But with the Brony convention I went to, it's just, good God, it's not even a 50-50 split. It was a lot more prevalent. It was out there. It's like,
that's what I was saying. Like, I noticed that the last 2 years.
Yeah, especially. I was genuinely shocked when I saw that. I mean, granted, I was also shocked because there was an entire table filled with animation cells from the original cartoons. I'm like, why are people not buying these?
I actually got some of those.
Good God.
I was about to say, when you asked the question, could it survive or could it work that way? I'm probably the wrong person to ask with this, but didn't Never Free North or Everfree Network tried that with Final Draft, where they tried to be like the bridge to Hasbro. They were going to make it super professional, and last I heard, and I'm not talking shit, he wound up going 20K in debt trying to get that to work.
He went 20K in debt, sponsoring like the AV team, flying himself out places, footing his own bill at the conventions. That was definitely a goal that he had in mind, but I think the timing was wrong, and I think the person was wrong.
What year was that?
We're talking like 2012 to 2000, maybe 13 or 14, one of the two. And what ended up happening is, he went into huge debt, but he was also kind of a prick. And not a lot of people that worked with Final Draft liked him. And our friend Scan, who has been on the show a few times and has worked with him and was there when he got kicked out of a convention because he was trying to throw his weight around and do things he wasn't supposed to do. And then later on, FNGR gave him a spot on a podcast to tell his story, and my friend Scam was like, no, everything that came out of his mouth during that podcast was a lie. So not only was it the wrong time when Hasbro was like, what the heck, we don't want bronies, and all of our good fan projects were getting shut down by them. It was the wrong person. So maybe if he had tried something like that in 2018, we might have had a better chance. But yeah.
Well, let's do practical application of the cons out there and the people in charge of those cons. Do we know anybody currently who would be, the gateway, so to speak? Who do you think would be the right person?
I would say the gentleman, and I don't know his name, but you see him at every BronyCon and every Everfree Northwest. He usually dresses up in a really nice suit with a top hat, big guy with a goatee.
Oh, does he have glasses?
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, do you know his name so I don't sound like an idiot?
Let me quickly see if I can look him up, because he
okay.
actually came up with my suggested...
Yeah, so Cruizer knows who I'm talking about, and probably the audience knows who I'm talking about, but that guy has run a lot of the conventions, and in doing so, I would imagine he's worked with a lot of the VIP guests. He might be able to call up some of the people that he would work with and say, hey, who do I talk to? Or if that isn't the person to talk to in the first place. And he might be able to work his way up the chain like that. It would be a stretch, but it's possible.
Well, I actually have some recommendations here. BotCon died in 2016. Hasbro wanted to go another direction. You guys probably heard about it when they made their infamous HasCon that was going to be a vendor exclusive where they'd show off their new products, and it died within a year. But now that BotCon's coming back, specifically next year, if they get in contact with Hasbro and Hasbro Fun or ties to them again, what I would recommend doing is getting a hold of whomever owns the BotCon license, sitting down and asking, how did you do it? And go from there.
That is a very good idea.
And again, yeah, you got to learn, and you got to make sure the guy doing it squeaky clean. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. Last thing you need Hasbro doing is Googling your screen name and seeing, I don't know, FullCon all up in your place. So, yeah, got to make sure it's somebody who's competent.
Right. It's almost like you're running for a politician's department. Got to make sure you have a clean background.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that. They're all dirty, but you have to be professional.
Right.
Truly professional.
Yep. So, okay, so let me throw this out there real quick. Does anybody else have anything in general that they want to add to the topic before we move on to audience questions?
Actually, yeah. Aside from the fandom, starting to come to grasp that we may have to get people from other fandoms to join in on this. If there's one other thing I would suggest is to perhaps maybe allow people from previous generations of My Little Pony to be guests. You don't have to like the previous generations of the show, but I do think they've at least earned our respect, because we would not have Friendship is Magic if not what they started all those decades ago.
Would they be draws?
Actually, I think it would if you, depending on how you market it. Why don't you get writers from, at least one writer from every generation, and have them do a panel where they discuss the differences and how they had to work through these scripts? I'd sit down and watch that, and I'm not even a brony, because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, that's a good spiel.
So an idea that I had that may or may not work, it might, be, you might get some people that come to this panel that I'm about to suggest and say, well, I don't exactly appreciate being hornswoggled into becoming a brony. But, that we've said earlier that bronies have other interests. They usually have other interests outside of just the show itself. So, like, one time at Everfree Northwest, I ran a panel called Harmony Through Health, and I used examples from the show to try to motivate people to become more healthy and maybe get into fitness or start working out and educate them. So what if we did it the other way around, where it was like we have something that's at face value not necessarily pony related, but if they but then the presenter says, okay, I got this idea from ponies, and then maybe someone in that audience might check it out themselves, and then that may or may not work. But that was the idea that came into my head. Real quick, what do you guys think about that?
Definitely worth a shot at the very least.
I think there should be a panel ran by me. It's like, how to not be a wuss. I will teach you how to punch things in the mouth.
I don't teach people how to fight, Lio, but okay.
How to be assertive by being a prick on the internet.
Yeah. Lio and I'll host a convention, and I'll be like, okay, and here's how you make sure you don't die at the age of 35 of a heart attack, and Lio just butts in. You start by hitting everybody who gives you trouble over the head with a folding chair.
Correct. Yeah, throw it when you're done.
Yeah, it's exactly
the evidence.
So, we got a couple of questions here. So, everybody watching, all 25 of you, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to ask it now. You can direct it at myself, but I'm going to intern direct it at everybody else, and you can also direct it at other people specifically on the panel here. And one thing we have is, so Brightheart asked, how many Brony conventions are left? I know a few ended in 2019 after the show's last season, so I'm going to take that opportunity to switch over to my window capture here. That was not, okay, so right here. I tabbed Brony Conventions for 2020. And we got, so we can just count these up here. We've got Hearthwarming Con in the Netherlands. We got Winnie City, so gosh darn, this Hearthwarming Con is this weekend. We got Winnie City, BabsCon, Griffin Isles, Sequestria, which may or may not come back next year because of everything that's been going on the last couple of weeks. We got My Little Pony Fair, which is the the Hasbro essentially convention, the toy fair down in my neck of the woods here. We got TrotCon, Galacon, Everfree Northwest, where I'll be going. I hope somebody else will join me there. EuroBronyCon, Alicon, out in Australia, finally. UK PonyCon and Ciderfest, and if I counted that right, I counted 15.
Okay then.
Yep. So, and we don't know quite yet. I should pay attention to where my windows are. We don't know quite yet how many of those are going to have programming outside of the fandom. So, I don't know. How many conventions are you guys going to be going to off that list, do you know?
I think 2.
Mm-hmm. I know you were planning on doing BabsCon and Everfree this year, Cruizer. How about everybody else?
I don't plan on going to any Brony conventions unless somebody's there that I need to have a stern talking to.
Well, let's, Lio, your mother. There, now you gotta come out to Everfree Northwest and beat me up.
Well, I mean, you didn't say anything mean about my mom.
Yeah, you kind of a little stiff there. You need to work on that.
Your mother, I never liked her spinach puffs.
Well, I didn't either. Heck yeah.
Gosh freaking darn it, what am I supposed to do? You're not
Swing and a miss.
Brony, I would hope you are the type of man that I would never have to have a conversation with you because of the type of people I usually have to have these conversations.
I know. It's just, before the stream, before you came in, FNGR and I were sparring a bit, and right now I'm kicking myself wishing I knew how to press your buttons in the same way.
Dude,
look, he started insulting my woman. You could try that with freaking Leo, see how that goes.
I mean, you're welcome to try.
Lio, I never liked your wife's spinach pots.
Well, I don't either because she doesn't make them.
All right, that's all I'm gonna. That's as much as that dead horse as I'm gonna beat. Paladin and Pony T asks wants to know how we would keep the fandom alive. Let's go down the line here. FNGR, what do you think? How do we keep the fandom alive?
Here's the problem with that. I think we just need new talent, and it would boil down to whatever Hasbro puts out next. Does it inspire the next wave? And I don't know. Can you bottle and sell what happened in Gen 4?
Well, you can if the writing and the voice acting is good, because that's what did it initially.
Well, I mean, just having a good show isn't necessarily going to get you over. I mean, look at what was that Thundercats series that everybody likes, Leo?
Well, they got screwed over in the Cartoon Network. Yeah, Cartoon Network killed that show, all but intentionally, from what I heard.
There's a lot of things that Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers haven't been able to do anything decent with that property since the 90s, and that was just when they put it on Toonami. That's a rabbit hole in and of itself, trust me.
All right, so there's our solution. We need to cross over Thundercats and My Little Pony and make our own show.
That would not end well, but here's
Thunder
the thing.
Ponies.
Here's the thing. I'm an old man. Samoht's an old man. Anthony's definitely an old man. We're all part of fandoms that have ebbed and flowed, have come and gone. They still exist. Bronies aren't gonna die just because the show's over or there's less conventions. You guys are still gonna exist. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
There's still Trekkies who wear their uniforms to work. Doesn't mean there's as many conventions as there used to be.
We don't talk about Trekkies.
There was a funny gag in the last Ponies anthology where they were like, "Oh man, there's been so many iterations of the franchise since Generation 4, but for some reason there's only fans of Generation 4 still," and it was like this dystopian vision of like BronyCon 2077 where they just keep showing up and it's devolved into pure degeneracy. Lio, I'll show you that clip after the stream here. You'll get a kick out of it.
Oh, I want to see that too. Shit.
All right, I'm surprised you haven't. Cruiser, how would you keep the fandom alive?
One thing that I would actually do is try to put a lot more focus on new talent within the community. In fact, there's actually one thing I've been trying to pitch to cons lately, and I'm surprised that they're iffy about it, and that's actually doing an event called Brony Star Search, where you have people who are new to making Brony content, and it will give them the chance to shine the light on them for a little bit, see if it's something that fans would embrace this person or not.
Okay, so we need a BronyCon has talent or something like that. BronyCon's we need more talent shows maybe.
Yeah, and just try to get as many people in to see that as possible, or maybe find a way to put it up on the internet.
Brony X Factor. Brony Masked Singer, but that sounds like furry bait to me.
Yes, it does.
I don't. As obnoxious as it is to have Brony fame. Let's not turn it into poppy fur. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that could backfire horribly.
My worst favorite yet?
Yeah. Lio,
Yeah.
the non-Brony of the group, how would you keep the Brony fandom alive?
Honestly, all I would do is, again, we're talking about keeping it going. Just enjoy the property, talk about it, analyze it, break it down, and share it with people you care about, and see if they're interested in it, and go from there. That's really all you do with anything that you're really fond of. The Transformer community has been going on literally as long as My Little Pony's been around, and heck, we just keep getting stronger and stronger as we get more properties that go out. You just have to be accepting of change and be able to adapt to it without being too rigid. And we've had really bad Transformer iterations. We've had Energon, we've had Armada, we've had Cybertron, but we also had really good ones. GoBots.
Now you're trying to pick a fight. What was that, Brony?
Well, Well, actually, he's not technically wrong because now GoBots does belong to Hasbro and they're part of Transformers. It's a mess. But we also had really good ones like Beast Wars, Beast Machines, the original generation one's a fan favorite, Transformers Prime. You just have to be able to roll with the punches and adapt. That's all you really have to do. It's just all about adaptation.
All right. Samoht, how would you do it?
This is a weird spitball theory, but I was thinking about, what if the conventions travel instead of being in one location, sort of like how Wizard World travels?
That's what BotCon does.
Yeah, BotCon does. Like, why not? Because a lot of people like, oh, I can't get the Baltimore. Oh, I can't get the Ohio. Why not say, okay, this year we're going to do it in Jacksonville, Wyoming, where there's some beautiful mountain ranges.
That's actually
I think I'm not fond of that. I think the better thing to do would just be to have a Brony convention in every city, so that.
Well, here's the thing. Like, all right, my wife, she likes Transformers. She's nowhere near as into it as I am for the obvious reasons, but also other 80s stuff too. So there's a convention called RetroCon I've never been to that I want to go to. So I'm like, all right, so I have a couple weeks of vacation. Can we go to RetroCon? She's like, I don't really care about conventions. How right? Have you ever wanted to go to Philadelphia? I would like to go to Philadelphia. I'm like, all right, that's how you sold her on going out of town. That's a good way to bring people in too.
Yeah.
All right.
Sometimes mix it up, try different locations. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sounds good. And I'm largely in agreement with Lio here. Is, we just gotta keep liking the show, and talking about it as much as we can. And if we can show it to people we like, then yeah, that'd be good. Even if there's no more Brony conventions, as long as we got the fan fictions, we'll be okay. Because
I mean, we have Sheldon here saying that he wants all of us, including the conventions, to have Corona-chan sweet.
Yeah. I was about to read that. I'm assuming that's in response to which conventions do we want to go to, and Shelly D's in the chat saying I want to go to all of them. I want Corona-chan's sweet embrace.
Learn to get past the border first, Sheldon, then we'll talk.
You stole my joke, you prick!
Can't steal if it wasn't yours.
I was waiting to finish my sentence so I could say it, and you jumped in and took it right from my hands.
He who hesitates is lost.
I am so mad right now, and that's how we're going to end the stream. We're going to end the stream with me being extremely salty. How dare you?
I wasn't able to find the guy's name, but I was only able to find his picture.
Yeah, and so we got that. So give us a few sentences of closing thoughts down the line, Samoht.
Closing thoughts is that I'm hoping that down the road that we bring some new blood in, that the new show brings the different ideas in. So it's possible. Right now let's just stay where we are and let's see, just keep on trucking.
All right. Lio, closing thoughts.
Without change, there is no victory.
Sounds good. Cruiser.
All I can say is to all my fellow Bronies out there, you're going to have to be a bit more open when it comes to letting in new people to be guests at these conventions. No one's saying you have to like this stuff, but at least be friendly about it.
And FNGR.
I would have thought that this whole dance would have been wrapped up by now, so everything after this point is all extra. It's all good.
All right. And I'm going to wrap it up by saying Princess Celestia for Smash. So thanks, everybody, for coming out. I hope you enjoyed the stream tonight. I thought it was a good conversation. We had a couple of good questions to talk about here. And I learned a thing or two about how things work, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. So once again, if you want to come on to the show, I'd love to have you. Just be sure to join up on my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. I'm extremely grateful to all of my Patreon supporters, especially those guys at the $10 and up tier. These guys are Autoknight, Sodengirder, Senko, Jennan Kellogg, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, and the Equestrian City Heroverse series. Be sure to check out all their links, as well as the links of my co-panelists here in the description. We're going to be streaming again on Friday. We're going to be playing some Dragon Ball Super, and I'll be streaming on Princess Heather Blossom's channel on Saturday for some crocheting, and we're doing another Brony debates next week. So that's where you can go if you want more Brawny Buck live streams. And yeah, I hope you all have a great night, and to my other Catholics out there, good luck to you this Lent season. And yeah, say goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye,
Good night, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
I'll see you later in your nightmares.